Welcome to Cyclomania's online tutorials, and today is my pleasure to introduce you to the world of vermicomposting. And for those that are new, the term vermicomposting means actually making a compost using earthworms, or also called red wigglers. So these worms actually has the capability of transforming organic material like kitchen leftovers into a beautiful, rich and nutritious natural fertilizer that you can use for indoors plants and also for your garden. So today I'm gonna walk you through the process of how to set up a vermicompost and using your Vermi Kit, and how to also actually maintain and manage any issue that you may have, like fruit flies and things like that, that sometimes happen when you're not managing correctly your vermicompost. And finally, I also gonna explain you how to separate or harvest your worms, which you want to continue using into the system, from the castings, which is actually the natural fertilizer made of worms' poop. So I hope you enjoy it. So when you order your Vermi Kit, this is what you have. So you have a magnifier, a couple of coffee filters, of course, the main characters, your worms. You have a Vermi Kit manual with a lot of instructions that we're gonna go over today in detail. You have also a bag with soil and the bedding. So all this is what you need to start your setup. And besides your Vermi Kit, I will ask you to have also at hand plastic container with a lid, and the lid is important, that has holes. So make sure you ask an adult to help you with the holes. What I usually do as well is with a hammer and a nail, you can actually have made the holes like this. But ask please an adult to help you with that process, so it provides some ventilation for your vermicompost. And it's so important to have it because you don't want to end up killing your worms. So let's start with the first step, which is the bedding. So we have in your Vermi Kit what the bags that indicates bedding. So bedding is actually a combination or a mix of shredded paper with cardboard, with peat moss, and cardboard, also the cardboard from the egg cartons. So all this material is so important to have it because it's the one that is gonna retain the moisture. And then also the bag that you get from your bedding, you can also use it as part of the bedding. So make sure you can include that bag as well into the bedding. So here is just some pieces. Make sure that the bottom of your container is covered, press, and then after that, what we need to include is our beautiful worms. So we welcome our worms to their new home. Make sure you help them spread a little bit, be very gentle with them, and make sure they are distributed into the bottom. So it will be something like that. It will take some time for them to get familiar with their new home. So that is why I recommend you to leave it for a week, but make sure you cover them with our second bag, which is the soil bag. So cover all gentle on top of them so they get used to with the material we're putting here. So use the whole package there. Reserve that bag for shredded paper that you will need to add as well on top of this soil. So make sure you have also shredded paper. So cover slightly, cover that soil, and to keep a little bit of moist, just use a spray bottle, just a little bit of water, cover, close your container, and wait for a week before you feed the system again. After a week, what we're gonna do is to include some of our kitchen leftovers. What kind of food should we include in our vermicompost? So usually what I recommend, and you have also your Vermi Kit in your manual, is tea bags are wonderful. So I have a bunch of tea bags. Try to cut those materials as much as you can. They love a lot of fruits, vegetable leftovers, even pieces of bread are good with moderation, all of those. Also with citrus, garlic, and onions, although I love those ingredients, it should be not so much because you also can create others. So make sure you balance those with a lot of leafy materials, banana peels. Also, if you have, so make sure that you add maybe, I don't know, like a cup of leftovers the first week after you have them. So don't saturate with a lot of food. Another important thing to add is that I also like adding is the coffee grounds. They love that, and also adds a nice smell to your vermicompost, more like an earthy smell. So make sure you add that as well. And add also crushed eggs. So the crushed eggs are good because that's gonna be the source of calcium. And those are very important nutrients that we want, especially when we are growing vegetables at home and we want to add a nice fertilizer. The calcium that comes from the eggs that gets decomposed thanks to the worms and other microorganisms are very good to have as well. So include that, a little bit of everything. And then make sure you cover with more soil and dry leaves. Also cut the leaves. And don't forget your shredded paper. Important here to actually add more dry stuff than actual green stuff. So the green stuff will be your kitchen leftovers. The brown stuff will be your newspaper, dry leaves, and also this soil. So it's like a lasagna. So then you repeat the process after a week, depending on how fast your worms are actually eating what you already put there. And again, you just add a little bit of water on top of that shredded newspaper, something like this. You cover, and in a week you do the same. So that you're gonna repeat this process until you get actually the container full of food. And then it comes the exciting part, which is separating your casting, which is the worm's poop, from the actual worms. So that's the next step that we're gonna do now. For 2 weeks or maybe more until actually your container and all the content should look something like this. Once it's all mixed and pretty much more homogeneous, so then we are ready for harvesting. That means separating the casting, which is the actual fertilizer or worm's poop, from the worms. And we want actually to separate the worms so we can use these guys back to the system and continue decomposing all the kitchen leftovers that we have. So there's many methods that you can imagine. One that we're gonna see today is using a lamp like this. So a bright light is good because, as you can see in one of your, if you do some of the Vermi activities, actually worms hate light. So what they are gonna tend to do is to just burrow themselves to the bottom. So they will escape the light after a few minutes. I recommend maybe if you have the time, an hour, 30 minutes. So you start just putting a tarp, make sure that wherever you're gonna be working has a plastic, and you start doing more like a cone shape piles like this. and spread it all little by little in small piles like this. If you're working in your garden, you can do that with a plastic bag or with a tarp, direct sunlight. But if you're doing it indoors in the basement, you just make sure that you have a nice bright light like this one. So just to make sure that the worms actually goes to the bottom. You can make those piles as big as you want. Make sure that it's more like a cone shape, like a pyramid. You see the guys are gonna start going to the bottom. So then you wait for a few minutes. If you have the time, maybe 30 minutes, an hour, so you make sure that you give enough time for them to just migrate to the bottom of your pile. And then after that, what we're gonna start doing is to have two small containers. One that is gonna be containing pretty much all the castings. That should look something like this. Very fine material, wonderful and ready to use in your planters indoors or also in the garden. And the other one that it will have actually all your little guys ready to work, to go back to work. So make sure you have those two separated here. And once you give enough time, you can start doing it, separating actually the top. If you see the worms, if you just turn it, it will be just the worms maybe on the bottom, but the top should be without castings. What I do with this top that should be ideally without worms, I use also a complementary process, which includes a strainer. So if you have a strainer at home, something like this, you put that here in the strainer and with a container like this, and you actually start just shaking a little bit. And that process would help you to have that fine castings that you can actually easily use into your garden or in any planter. And then it's easier also to just pick manually the worms. And as you notice, I'm also wearing gloves, especially for those that are starting on the vermicomposting journey. It's a little bit safer and I will say more comfortable to wear gloves that just do it directly. And it helps you also to be more gentle with the worms, so you are not afraid of touching them, and you can just start separating manually wherever you see the worms. There is also a bunch of mini worms that when they are in a juvenile stage looks like a white, so those also make sure you keep them. They're gonna become a strong hard workers, so separate those on wherever you're putting your worms. And there is also a lot of and you have a picture in your manual of eggs. So the eggs looks more like a lemon shape, yellow, like I don't know if you're able to see that, but it's once you get familiar with them, so it's easy to just take them and separate them also put it in the container that has all the worms. So the rest is ready to just use it as a castings, and you put it on the pile that you have your pure castings or fertilizer, so container. So repeat that with the rest of your piles and you're ready to go and start the system with your worms and ready to use your castings for plants. Well, I hope you enjoyed and learned lots and you are more motivated to start your vermicompost at home now that you learn how to set up your Vermi Kit, how to maintain your vermicompost, and also how to harvest and use that castings into your plants and into your garden. So if you have any issue or any feedback or question for us, please contact us at the email that is in the chart box below. And we're also very active on social media, so follow us and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And thank you so much for watching.